He taught me how to be a good liar, a very good liar without any conscience.
Why is the internet turning on Gypsy Rose? Is she a master manipulator like her mother, DeeDee? Did she carefully orchestrate a plan for Godejohn to take the life of her controlling mother? These are the questions that have been swirling around the internet since Gypsy Rose's release from prison. Let's delve into the disturbing details.
Hi, honey. I'm feeling it.
If you're not familiar with Gypsy Rose Blanchard and why there's so much media attention on her, here's a quick summary. Gypsy, now 32, endured years of abuse from her mentally unstable mother, DeeDee Blanchard, who doctors believed had Munchausen Syndrome by proxy. This mental illness involves a caregiver, often the mother, making up or causing symptoms to make the child appear sick. DeeDee convinced Gypsy she was ill and younger than she really was. Gypsy was put on various medications and underwent unnecessary surgeries due to her mother's lies. When Gypsy learned her true age, she became tired of the mistreatment and orchestrated a plan for her boyfriend of 3 years Godejohn to unalive her mother DeeDee. Now that we are all caught up, let's get into Gypsy's dark police interrogation and the chillingly disturbing lies she told the interrogator.
Your mom's dead, okay? Now, what I want to ask you is, your mom's passed away, okay? She's deceased, all right? Now, what I want to ask you, did you have involvement in this?
She's like, no, oh my God, was it a heart attack? Did she commit suicide?
Please tell me.
Where she was in the interrogation room and she got caught, it gave me chills. And that same bad vibe from my original post. How she can go from 1 second being one person and then the next second turn on the tears and start crying and acting innocent. In that interrogation video, she immediately flipped the switch and was like, oh, I don't know anything that's going on, bawling her eyes out. It wasn't me, it was him. Like how, that's like a master manipulator right there.
I couldn't upload the full interrogation on YouTube. In each instance, when the detective asked a question, Gypsy started sobbing loudly. The crying appeared insincere, and her dramatization seemed highly manipulative. Considering what I now know about Gypsy Rose, her behavior appears unsettling and deceitful. I think that if certain individuals lower their guard with Gypsy, she won't hesitate to be manipulative. Although I recognize her fear and the complexity of her thoughts, why did she choose to lie to the detective? Being a victim of prolonged abuse, she had received warnings from people online and even Nicholas about her mother's mistreatment. Some suggest Stockholm Syndrome as a possibility, and while I'm not dismissing it without expert opinion, let's examine what's said about Stockholm Syndrome victims leaving their boozers. A search on "Do victims of Stockholm Syndrome try to run away?" reveals that they feel an affinity towards their captor and support and defend their behavior. They begin to pity their captor and feel that they share similar goals. They feel inclined to save their captor. They make little to no effort to escape. It's essential to note that Gypsy attempted to escape DeeDee more than once. The second attempt resulted in Nicholas's drastic actions, but the first involved Gypsy using a BB weapon, causing only superficial injuries to DeeDee.
When I shot my mother, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, did I just do that? What did I just do?
Now, let's delve into Godejohn's mental state and his thoughts on the night of the unaliving, as well as his current perspective on Gypsy Rose. While some may argue that Nicholas, being a convicted unaliver, shouldn't have a voice in this situation, and I'm not endorsing or defending his actions in any way, I believe that both sides of this intricate story should be heard.
First, I want to ask you, why did you agree to do this interview with us?
The reason I've agreed to do this interview was because when I noticed that my ex-co-defendant, Gypsy Blanchard, got a lot of attention, as she did, and she just kept on getting more and more attention. I felt that it's been tipped in one side of a scale to where I really wasn't getting much coverage. I wasn't being able to actually be able to voice my opinion. I wasn't able to let everyone know what I truly feel. I just know that she knows. She knows that I've taken the responsibility for mine already. I still have feelings for her. Of course, I will always have feelings for her. But every human being needs to grow and learn from their mistakes. And I feel that's where me and her both are right now. We're learning from this mistake that we've both made. I mean, the way she was raised, no woman should ever, no child for that matter, should ever have to be raised that way. I did feel that she was not taking responsibility for her actions, but at the same time, due to the way I know she was raised, I can't blame her.
Now let's get into Nicholas's state of mind. Nicholas was diagnosed with autism in grade school, according to his father Bobby Godejohn. From the very first day when I was in kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, every single one of those days, I was in special education, Nicholas said. Psychologist Kent Franks testified at a 2016 hearing that Nicholas has more the mind of a child than an adult, according to a 2016 report by KY3 in Springfield, Missouri. The psychologist said that after 2 mental evaluations on Nicholas, he determined that Nicholas is on the autism spectrum with an IQ of 82 and the functionality equivalent to that of a 10-year-old.
I find it really disturbing that she put her ex-boyfriend up to kill her mom and then doesn't even care what happens to him. After all, it came out that Gypsy was perfectly healthy, not developmentally delayed at all. But her ex-boyfriend, who she put up to this, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder level 2, which means he, quote, requires substantial support with accompanying intellectual impairment. Still, he was sentenced to life in jail. He said many times that he tried to talk her out of doing this and just have them run away. He told her that this was going to haunt him for the rest of his life.
The way she was raised, no woman should ever, no child for that matter, should ever have to be raised that way. I did feel that she was not taking responsibility for her actions, but at the same time, due to the way I know she was raised, I can't blame her. I can't. That, and along with my religion, with being a Christian, I know I'm not supposed to judge, so I'm not going to judge.
Meanwhile, she's never showed remorse for putting this man through this. Never taken into account that he was intellectually impaired and was diagnosed with that. She just married old dude while she was in prison, and she's off living her life, having her release party, which I'm not saying she didn't deserve to be released. Let's be clear. I think she should have gotten out of prison. While it's becoming a literal TikTok trend to have Gypsy Rose release parties, and it's all over the country, people are having parties for them. He has to be in prison for the rest of his life. Yes, he's the one who ultimately did it, but he wouldn't have done it otherwise. Other than her just saying there was no other way, and he was trying to back out. You see what I'm saying? He's impaired, and it's like we just threw him away instead of getting him actual real help. And no one cares.
Now, let's consider Nicholas and Gypsy's state of mind on the night of the unaliving. Before delving into that, it's important to note that Gypsy found ways to access the internet without DeeDee's knowledge. Despite orchestrating DeeDee's unaliving in an elaborate plan with Nicholas over the years, it raises questions that, over the 3-year period of communicating with Nicholas without DeeDee's knowledge, she never considered reaching out to authorities or family friends. Furthermore, Gypsy engaged in online conversations with her neighbor about her relationship with Nicholas, yet she never disclosed the views by her mother to this neighbor, whom she trusted enough to share details about the secret relationship. Something seems very off.
Some of the messages the love-struck teenager sends a friend about her Prince Charming.
I met a wonderful guy. He's my first boyfriend. He gives me poems and is so romantic.
She was talking about this new guy that she was now in love with, and that they had met on a Christian dating site, and that they were already planning on naming their children after him.
We want a snow wedding in a gazebo with red and white roses.
Honestly, what I was thinking whenever I saw these messages is that these were just like fantasies and dreams.
But on their shared Facebook page, the harsh reality is what people saw.
DeeDee presented as a very doting mother. This was her child. She knew she was sick, and she was just going to love her unconditionally until she couldn't anymore.
But then comes the day when family friends Kim and David are horrified when something very different popped up on Gypsy and DeeDee's Facebook page, a very vulgar post.
It said, "The bitch is dead."
Now, let's examine the mindset of the former couple on the night of the unaliving.
Told me before I ended up getting there in a text that the
There was latex gloves that'd be on the porch. She did say that. Right on the text is it's clear as day that you can actually see it. And then, well, I ended up finding them when I got there, and I let her know that I was at the door. She opened the door, and she made sure I had the gloves on before she gave me the weapon, and she made sure that she wouldn't let me open the door. She made sure I had those gloves on before either of those doors opened. So that's the reason why you ain't gonna see any fingerprints on in there, either any of that stuff. And then from that point on, well, my darker part of me took over, and because she knew right away that I admitted straight out to the whole thing that I was not going to get involved with this, no matter how much she tried to push me. It was going to have to be a darker side of me of some form that I have never had the opportunity to explore. So I did not know what it was capable of till that dark night. Once that night came, I knew fully well what it was capable of. And at that point, there was no time going back, because from the first step I walked into the house, I knew there was no going back.
Nick claims he thought about taking Gypsy and running away instead, but Gypsy didn't want to do that, and he was taken over by both of their darker sides.
There was two thoughts that came in my mind. I had one thought in my mind out of nowhere appear, basically saying, take her and run. That was the benevolent thought, take her and run. As if it was the kind of feeling that it was basically trying to influence on me, as if I was somehow going to get away with it if I ran away with her. As if somehow we were able to keep her mom at bay, better than she was able to in the past when she ran away. However, the other thought came in my mind was because it saw as basically because the darker part of me was also in love with the darker part of her. And because of it, the thought was, excuse my French, but it basically said, this is dead. Not letting her get between me and her, this bitch is dead, basically is what the thought was. And fortunately, I ended up listening to my darker side because I wanted to be with her, and I remember what she said, and I wanted to believe what she was saying, and unfortunately, I should have listened to my other part of me. Ironic, because I was trying to influence her to go with, but she never went with it. She never wanted to run away, so I couldn't get that to work. But anyways, she ended up going to the bathroom. She locked it, and I waited at least a minute and thought about if I really wanted to do it. And before I was to do it, allegedly, I was willing to do it. The next thing I know, I ended up going right into it and thought there was no going back, because I had myself on my word, and I was not one to break my word to really anyone at all if I had one to keep at the time. If it was worth keeping, I was going to keep it.
To the bus stop. He wanted me to first carry the knife with me onto the Greyhound bus, but I assumed that they had metal detectors. So I suggested, let's mail the knife. I thought it was the safest option. And then we took a Greyhound bus back to Wisconsin. I wanted my mother found because I felt remorse, and I couldn't stand the thought of her just being there. But I needed something alarming that would alarm her friends to call the police. And then one morning we wake up to the sound of police. We're surrounded.
Now, let's listen to what the Good Wives Network, who collaborated with Gypsy Rose and her family for quite a while, had to say about Gypsy. Before we delve into that, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button to stay up to date with the bougie community. Hugs and kisses, and don't forget to share your thoughts on the entire Gypsy Rose situation below.
Plot has thickened and I came across some interesting stuff. There's this Facebook group called the Good Wives Network that used to work with Gypsy Rose and her family, and they're saying that the entire family is con artists, including Gypsy. The owner of this page used to be the spokesperson for the family. The page used to be called by Proxy, which is the disorder that DeeDee had, which is Gypsy's mom. It says, for 3 years I defended this family relentlessly. I bled, sweat, and teared for them. I was in every group. But then Gypsy's first fiance, Ken, came along. That's when they became concerned for Gypsy. Christy is Gypsy's stepmom, and Gypsy didn't want the stepmom doing interviews for her anymore, so she actually flipped it over to the woman in charge of this Facebook page. So the woman in charge of this Facebook page said that she actually did not agree with the fiance at the time and thought that she needed some mental help. She was honest in her feelings. So Gypsy started to threaten this woman's career, her life. Gypsy's stepmom, Christy, tried to get scammers to come after them. She said they were harassed and stalked and cyberbullied every day, all while Gypsy Rose's stepmom was working with them and messaging them. So she was like actually playing a Jekyll and Hyde at the same time. They didn't know she was behind it. She was telling them that she loved them every day, asking her to go on Dr. Oz with her and they would get $5,000 each, starting a rumor that this woman cheated on her husband and got an STD and she made moldy cookies. It just goes on and on, all while saying, oh, this stalker's harassing me too. Crazy, please help. Pause to read. Then this person found the interrogation video with the police and Gypsy after DeeDee's murder, and that's when everything changed. They actually got a hold of her medical records and discovery file, which told an entirely different story. Remember, in the murder case, you can only be tried for the murder and the specifics of that case, not all this other stuff. What you have to start with in this case is by throwing out anything and everything you've heard or seen and only look at facts and evidence, and this is the previous spokesperson for this family. It says everything else is a distraction. The only person you can't believe more than Gypsy is Christy, the stepmom. She said that Gypsy's dad basically threw away the kids and didn't want anything to do with them. And then after all the things happened with DeeDee, Christy, the stepmom, comes in, never really cared about Gypsy anyway, but just took over the role as being DeeDee number 2 and started to con other people. Even if you feel bad for Gypsy, you can't trust what she says. She was taught by one of the best con families I've ever seen. She even admits it in the documentaries. I've never told the truth, not even to my attorneys. My mom taught me to be a good liar. I remember when she said that. To lie with no conscience. That is her own admission, and she did no things in prison to get any real help for any of this. That's true. She sent her way to psychologists in prison and said she didn't want to go to them anymore. That's real weird considering her history. I think that she would need therapy for the rest of her life, don't you? Her family didn't encourage it either, but they sure as shit supported her dating and getting engaged to a slew of different guys while supposedly never having any type of normal life or interactions with people. Great parents. You want to absolve Gypsy of her crimes, and why not take it a step further and absolve DeeDee too, while she was doing exactly what her own mother did to her? Pause to read. DeeDee does not deserve forgiveness. What she did to Gypsy is abuse. We've never denied that, but what we have said is that this is not Munchausen by proxy disorder. I mean, this is the mental illness community that they said to be a part of, and they're saying, that's not what this is. This is actually just child abuse, and we see through this entire con artist family. It says they are not ill, they are sociopaths. Gypsy was groomed, hell, so was DeeDee, and from what I know, this goes back generations in this family. When Gypsy crossed the line from victim to perpetrator was when she started manipulating a very disturbed, very sheltered, autistic guy from the internet to take her mom's life. Used every skill and tactic that her mama taught her on him, and again, this is the spokesperson for the family previously. She sat down with the medical files and saw that a lot of things that were in the medical files were really weird. You know how the salivary glands were removed, apparently, from Gypsy? Well, how does she lick her lips? How does she spit? How? So she pulled out this file and found that there were lots of Botox injections, one reduction of them, but no removals of salivary glands, even though this is all over the report. Pause to read. These are not your regular documents, folks. I've never seen doctor's notes that look like these. In every document, the tests are negative. There are so many negative tests, it's insane. But on the next page would be the procedure they just stated she didn't need. This was a long con with doctors involved. The hearing aids were not used and the test was faked. Gypsy knew then that she was faking it and doing what her mom told her to get things that she wanted. Again, this is grooming. In Louisiana, where they're from, none of the doctors were doing anything like this to them. It was only when they got to Missouri that they found doctors that would just do whatever they wanted. Pause to read all this stuff. Basically, they found Dr. Breckerman and he became Gypsy's main doctor, and the files are the most inappropriate and convoluted out of all of them. He landed in Missouri, and they're thinking that's why Gypsy's family went there, so they could continue with this scam. The previous medical records were lost in Hurricane Katrina, so they didn't have any of the proof that she didn't actually have any of these diseases, so when she went to Missouri, this doctor could continue to give her a lot of diagnosis for things, while saying, I used to treat her. We had all these records. They were just lost in the flood. Gypsy's neighbors would see her walking outside. And around that time, they were awarded with that Habitat for Humanity house that they got for free. Remember that? Guess who awarded them with that? Her doctor. Pause to read. Remember how the first thing she wanted to do when she got out of prison was to meet Taylor Swift? She's saying the D is fire and he rocks her world every night. Something tells me that this isn't the last time that they're trying to get attention and free shit. This is going to be pretty interesting if we keep paying attention.